Good evening. Welcome to Speaking in Your Basement. Tonight we're going to switch up the format a little bit. I'm going to add a list in the middle of our episode. The list is going to be 3 long-term strategies for developing confidence. Let's start with a story. It was a few years back, and I had just gotten a raise, and after doing some training on the new team, the job, I was at the same company, but doing a different job, which paid more. So I just had a bump in pay, so there's a little bit of extra pay. And I'd gone to nights after being trained. Everybody on this team started off on nights and usually stayed there for a year or so. I ended up staying there for like 3 years, but that's neither here nor there. And at this point, I wasn't aware that that was going to be the case yet. But I was actually handling the night shift fairly well. And it seemed like I had a lot of time. I didn't get much sleep on my work days, but I usually slept at night on my days off. And so it was working out okay, at least for a while. And over the years, the night shift really caught up with me. It really took its toll. But at the time, again, I was doing all right on it and felt like I had a lot of free time, felt like I had extra money. And so I started exploring some things. I started looking into cooking and nutrition a little more deeply. I got a machine, I forget what they call it, but it's basically a sous vide device. They have several of these out there. The one, I can't remember the name of the one I got, but it was almost $200. But I was making enough extra money that didn't seem like a huge deal, and we used it for several years, so we got pretty good value out of it before it died. But there's a variety of different things I started looking into and exploring, and a lot of things I was working to improve in my life. I started meditating again. And overall, it started leading to a bit of an upward spiral. And that's a powerful experience. If you just go about, you don't have to learn whole new skill sets or anything like that, although it's useful to always be learning something new. But to just adjust things in your life, just find little things that you can tweak or adjust to make them a little more to your liking. You do a few of those in a row and you start getting that feeling of an upward spiral, like things on a large scale are getting better for you. You're moving more and more things in the right direction and it picks up a certain momentum. And that's a powerful thing to do. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but one of the things I liked best about that is it never seemed like that quite went away. Once the night shift started taking its toll on me, I had to figure out how to get off the night shift. I did that, and then it took a while to adapt to the day shift. And then, so within a few months of that, I was more or less adapted to the day shift. And then I joined Toastmasters, and as one upward spiral kind of plateaued and leveled off, very shortly after that, I started on another upward spiral, which was learning, getting better at communication and sort of being tricked into a variety of leadership positions when it had been my custom for a long time to avoid them as much as I could. So one upward spiral ended to an extent at least, or plateaued, leveled off, and then another one began. So it's a powerful effect if you can find it, if you can get it started. A lot of times it takes some effort to get it moving in the beginning, but if you keep it going, it develops a sort of life of its own. It's a very cool thing. We'll talk more about this, but the list for tonight, 3 strategies for building long-term confidence. The first, see, I should have gotten my list. I had all this planned out. Now I've forgotten what the first one is. Hang on one sec. We'll check the list. See a little more of the room than you typically do here. And exposure. Consistent, repeated exposure to whatever it is you're afraid of, whatever makes you uncomfortable. Now, for those of us learning speaking, I suggest the first thing to start with is just practicing speaking. Practice out loud on your own. just get more comfortable with speaking out loud, getting your volume correct, getting comfortable with being a little bit louder, getting comfortable with varying your tone and varying your volume, varying your pace, and just playing around with a variety of things and getting comfortable speaking. So you practice on your own. Now you can do this with any number of things. If you're working out, then it can just be getting something simple started, just a warm up or a really simple series of exercises, just a little bit. You're not trying to do anything incredible to begin with. You're just showing up. You're showing up consistently. And the key is the consistency, not the intensity. Intensity second, consistency first. And it's just that exposure, because the long-term exposure, whether that be being in a leadership position, the more leadership decisions you have to make, the more meetings you facilitate, the more corrections you give, but also the more good jobs you give, the more you give people the chance to show you how creative and or skillful they can be in their position. All these things help build you into a more effective leader. And the more you show up and experience them, even though you're going to mess some up, you're going to see missed opportunities. There's a variety of things that are going to go wrong. But you're going to see, one of the many things you'll see through that consistent exposure over time is even when it goes wrong, it's usually okay. It's usually fine. And then you keep moving and you learn a lesson. You might learn multiple lessons and you keep getting better. So exposure to the discomfort, exposure to the fear, which is practice, but it's practice specifically in that part you're uncomfortable with, because when you face the discomfort again and again and again over time, you just get less and less fazed by it. And that's not only in the area that you're working on, but some of that will carry over to other areas of your life as well. The second method of developing long-term confidence is public speaking. Now, of course, if you're watching this, you're likely learning speaking, so this kind of plays naturally in that way anyway. But for anybody, public speaking is a powerful skill to learn, and for many people, it's one of their biggest fears. And so, if you can overcome that, and for those of you who've already practiced speaking and the exposure phase of these suggestions, you're just taking it to the next level. So there's numerous clubs that allow people to speak that you can speak at on a regular basis. If you're a member of a church, that might be another opportunity. There's a variety of places, likely somewhere near you, where you'll have an opportunity to speak. One of the best and most straightforward is to just join a local Toastmasters club. Most clubs, now you'll have to figure out, each club is different, but the majority of them I've seen meet once a week. That's the typical consistency for Toastmasters meetings. So you can expect, assuming you want to show up to as many meetings as you can, you're going to get an opportunity to speak once a week. And there's a variety of ways you can speak. And if you tell whoever is signing you up as a Toastmaster, if you tell them what your plan is, that you're wanting to speak at least once a week for, say, 6 months or a year, they're going to help facilitate that for you. They'll tell you about taking on roles and how to do the roles, and roles give you a chance to speak. There's also, usually they do table topics at most meetings, which are just short, off-the-cuff answers where you're asked a question, you don't have any time to prepare, you just have a minute or two to speak on that topic to answer the question. That's one way. You can also do prepared speeches, which are typically 5 to 7 minutes long. They can be longer depending. But you'll get those opportunities. You'll get at least one of those at virtually every meeting. And so over the next year, you will have spoken publicly 52 times. You will have faced your discomfort around public speaking 52 times. A year from now, you just join a Toastmasters club and go once a week. Of course, if you miss a few, not a big deal. And of course, you're going to go a long way in just 6 months. So there's a lot of power in public speaking. Again, even if you're not interested in publicly speaking professionally, you're not really worried about it for career development, it's powerful for all levels of communication, including communicating with yourself, but speaking with a family member, when you can actually get in multiple people and speak, get yourself settled to where you can speak clearly and relatively calmly, even if it's not perfectly calmly, just relatively calmly, it's going to help you speak in a variety of different situations. And that's very valuable. Improving the relationships in your life, coming across a little more clearly, a little more confidently. It's a very powerful way to not only have more impact with the people you love, but to just be a more meaningful person in their lives. So the first one's exposure, and then you work on public speaking. The third, we talked a little bit about at the story we opened with. You start dialing in little aspects of your life. And this is definitely a long-term strategy because building skills should be a part of this. You always want to be working on either a new skill or just further developing a skill you already have. That's part of the fun. That's part of the joy of life, whether it's something work-related or a hobby or any number of other skills you could be learning. Always be working on something. I'd say at least one. I wouldn't try to do too many at once because I've done that a lot. The overwhelm, a lot of times you just end up dropping stuff, falling off of things, not going as fast as you could have gone if you just focused a little bit more. But as long as you're learning something, that's very valuable. And again, if you can handle more than one thing, you can work on more than one thing as well. But there's a lot of little things in your life as well. There aren't really skills, just little things you'd like to adjust that you can make your life a little bit better with. And it doesn't really require any long-term learning. Sometimes just a little bit of practice, just a little bit of presence to remember to do it. One example for me, I like country roads. And I don't know why exactly. I grew up in the Southeast, so I guess that would be a big piece of why. But I started back before the lockdowns happened. I had a real simple, the quickest route possible to get from my job back to my house. Took a little less than 20 minutes. And I found an alternate route, which took a little more than 20 minutes, but it drove me down what looked like a country road. It's right next to the city here in Colorado Springs, but it's a very heavily wooded road for at least part of it, and there's not a whole lot built up around it, and it's a pretty drive. And so I wouldn't do it every time, but a few times a week I would come home on that country road, take a couple extra minutes to come home, and it gave me a nice, pleasant thing to look forward to at the end of the day. It was just, I can't really explain it. It was just something small but satisfying. And I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed that a great deal. And if you look around your life, there are tons of things like that, whether you like country roads or not. There are tons of things like that with a very small amount of work or very small amount of planning, you can make things noticeably better, noticeably more enjoyable, noticeably more satisfying. And the more you do this, the more you find this place where you just like your life. You like your life better than you did before. It's interesting, all the status games people play, they're playing the game of trying to get other people to think they're cool, smart, skillful, whatever it is. They're trying to get other people to raise their opinion. I've done a lot of that, and I'm not saying that's wrong. To a certain degree, you got to play the game. You got to get hired at places. There's a variety of things you need to do in your life where your external status, the way other people see you, has an impact. But usually that's at least partially based on how you see yourself. And how do you see yourself? Well, the more you like your life, it's very close to the same thing as self-esteem or a positive self-image or whatever else you want to call it. It seems like these might be overlapping concepts, but they're all very similar. They're all touching near the same thing. And when you improve that, when you take care of yourself like you're a person worth taking care of, when you show that actual care for yourself, not just warm feeling for yourself, not just saying things nice to yourself, but actually doing something that you're going to appreciate, that you're going to enjoy a little bit. And it's fine to test things. If you think that might be nice, you don't know if it's going to be nice, but it might be, why not test it out? See if it's nice or not. See if you like it in your life. And the more little things you dial in like that, you make your life better and better and better. And that gives you something like status with yourself. And when you're really satisfied with yourself, will you really enjoy living your life? Even if it starts with just the small things, you can get a lot of big things in place long term if you just start setting those small things right. And the more you do that, the more you build something like status with yourself. And when you have that status with yourself, not only does it tend to reflect very positively for other people, where they treat you as if you have some degree of status or some degree of social standing. When they don't like you, it's not that big a deal. You don't care. You got a really cool life to get back to if someone else doesn't appreciate it. So long term, start to dial in your life. Start to figure things out. Start to set things right. The more you do that, the more you're going to be happy you did. The more you're going to be able to look in the mirror and honestly smile at yourself. The pep talk won't be so necessary anymore. You'll just look in the mirror and smile, looking forward to the life that you've set up for yourself. I'm Ben Langley. Thanks very much for spending some time with me today. We'll talk again soon.